Today we're cooking the French classic, chicken and mushroom fricassee, and we'll take the opportunity to talk about cooking with butter and cream. Starting with the butter, which is 15 to 20% water, and until the water fully evaporates, by definition, this cannot go above 100 degrees Celsius. So it's pointless to add your chicken too early. You'll just end up giving it more surface moisture. Once you start to hear this gentle sizzling sound, and we're keeping this at medium heat the whole time, we start to add our chicken pieces to give them a bit of color. And fricassee is a relatively pale dish compared to a lot of the modern stews where you often associate the meat with high smoke point oil and strong browning, for the reason that butter has a smoke point of 150 degrees Celsius. Anything above that, the milk solids from the butter starts to burn, and instead of the richness and complexity you associate with butter, you get bitterness. But to get the most out of your chicken pieces, you want to cause what's called the Maillard reaction, the amino acid from the protein reacting to reducing sugar, and that's what's going to develop the complex meaty flavors. And while that can occur low and slow from 120 degrees Celsius onwards, it doesn't really meaningfully happen until it hits 140. So if you think about it, in classic French cooking, you are playing with a 10 degrees Celsius safety margin to get the best of both worlds from the butter and from your meat, which is why a lot of modern techniques start to dilute the butter with a higher smoke point oil or start using butter at a much later stage. You season a bird with salt. And it's important to cook them in one single layer to not overcrowd the pan, otherwise we end up boiling the meat. And because we're using gentle heat, it takes time for this to get the meaningful blonde color. So take your time, don't rush it. Beautiful. And that's gentle Maillard reaction. It's also important to note that you rarely get caramelization with butter only cooking, precisely because meaningful caramelization in most forms do not occur until something hits 160 degrees Celsius. That guarantees the burning of the butter. So this is already too much browning for classic standards. We took it a bit too far and got too excited, but my points were still valid. Now we take out the first batch. And round two. If you're making this at home for a weekday meal, just use chicken thighs. They're way more forgiving. Now, chicken comes out temporarily. And we start to introduce the aromatic vegetables, starting with the sweet component, which is normally either leeks, onions, or shallots. Today we're just using all three for the purpose of demonstration. We have some crushed garlic, which adds a more caramelized form of sweetness and some complexity. And often there's an optional celery, which contributes to a bit of a herbal note in the overall dish and some earthiness that will work extremely well with the mushrooms. So we're going to use that today. Salt once again. And at this point, we're using medium-low heat. The objective of the exercise here is to cook them without color, to evaporate their water content, to concentrate their flavors, in particular the sweetness we just talked about. And because they're quite fibrous, it actually takes them a while to start to become translucent. So once again, take your time, don't rush it. Now, once there's not much steam coming out, meaning most of the water content has been evaporated, we're ready to add our sliced mushrooms. Today we're using button mushrooms. You can also use chestnut. I wouldn't go as far as portobello because then that becomes a bit too overpowering. And we're adding them in this order because mushrooms are typically around 80 to 90% water. Had we added the mushrooms before the aromatic vegetables, it'll cool down the pan and end up steaming both the aromatic vegetables and the mushrooms. We season as we go, and this will also help the mushrooms draw out their moisture. And that's why for this dish, it's important to slice your mushroom quite thin to help them release their moisture quickly. You see what I meant by 80 to 90% water? Now, once there's not much steam coming out and the mushrooms have shrunk by at least half, we start to make our makeshift roux by adding some all-purpose flour to the aromatic vegetables and the mushrooms. And we stir to start cooking the flour for the butter to start coating each starch granules of the flour, preventing them from clumping together. And once you see no visible white dot, and it starts to smell a bit like a bakery, we start to incorporate some dry white wine, straight from the fridge. Not because we want to taste the gooseberry notes from the Sauvignon Blanc, but because when we start adding the wine, or any form of liquid, the starch granules from the flour starts to swell, starts to gelatinize, and that's what's going to thicken the liquid. And the low temperature helps us slow down the process, buying us more time to prevent them from clumping together. You can see immediately how the texture changes. And we take the opportunity to deglass the pot, mopping up all the potential burn bits, rectifying all the mistakes I made earlier. And the objective of the exercise here is just to cook out the alcohol. We're not trying to cook out the acidity and brightness of the white wine. So once you can't smell the alcohol anymore, we start to incorporate our cooking liquid. You can use chicken stock. Today, to keep it simple, just some water. And because we made a roux, we add the liquid slowly in the beginning. Chicken pieces go back in. If you really want to go the extra mile, add the chicken breast 20 minutes into the cooking, so they do not overcook. But it's a rustic dish after all. So everything goes in, along with the meat juices. We bring this back to a boil, during which we add a couple of bay leaves, again to reinforce the herbal notes of the celery and to complement the earthiness of the mushrooms. And speaking of earthiness, some thyme. Now, if you bought the whole chicken, chances are you would have the carcass. Now it's a good time to add that in as well. So we're almost making a makeshift chicken stock. Just a touch more liquid. Now, we bring this to a boil, lower the heat and let it simmer for 40 to 45 minutes. Now we're ready. Look at that. Whew. We've removed the carcass. Don't throw this away because it only had about 40-45 minutes. You can still get a very decent stock out of them by boiling them further. The thyme and the smell of the thyme is just amazing. We once again take out the chicken pieces. Now, before adding the cream, we solve for the consistency of the sauce, which is a personal choice. So for me, we're going to crank up the heat slightly and reduce it down a bit. Bearing in mind, the cream would also further thicken it. Beautiful. Now, we reduce the heat to low and we start to incorporate the double cream to add richness and texture. And the reason why we add this last minute is because cream consists of milk fats, protein, and water. Once it's exposed to a prolonged period of high temperature, meaning above 85 degrees Celsius, it starts to split and curdle up, giving you a grainy texture and losing richness. And if you're committed to using cream anyway, use double cream. It has 45% fat, which gives you a richer finish and is way less prone to splitting. If you want a lighter touch, creme fraiche is a much better bet than single cream. Because of its natural acidity, it's even more split resistant than the double cream, and you can even add it before the braising process. Now it's lightly coating the back of my spoon. Final touches, two of double cream's best friends. Black pepper to balance and cut through the richness. And some lemon juice, once again, for balance. Now you can add everything back in family style, but today we plate one. Everything on top. And that's chicken and mushroom fricassee.